Hello there, and welcome to Everybody Dice podcast number 53, where we're going to be talking about which board games in the Board Game Geek Top 100 we feel should be lower on the list. I am Steve, and today I am joined by... That's not anyone. That, though, is Daryl. Say hi, Daryl.
Hello, I'm on the left. I guess.
I am pointing at you right now, and we are also joined by...
Hello.
That's
Hello.
Ian down there. Hello,
Hi.
Ian. Hi.
Hi.
Still getting used to this system a bit. Hello, guys. How are you?
I'm sleepy.
Sleepy. Great. Okay. So, yep, absolutely perfect. Great banter there. So at this point, I'll talk a little bit about what's been going on the website and website channel. And basically, we just last weekend released the Chronicles of Crime 1400 review, which almost brings us up to date on our review list at that point. So that's kind of cool to get there. So please do go over and check that one out. I try something new that doesn't work especially well, but hey, it's something.
Are you naked?
I am not naked. I don't think I've worked out how to get around the YouTube algorithm by doing so far.
You've got a tuck.
You've got a tuck.
Are you allowed to? Is
so
that what
the
it is? You've got a
The
tuck.
algorithm registers the outline of a donga.
Right,
If you
okay.
tuck, it doesn't understand.
So if you go full
'Cause
Ken
the-
doll,
'cause-
basically.
Because there's kendo. If there's no
Full
bobs and you've tucked, it doesn't understand. It just lets it slide.
Just happens. Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know for next time. So when we do our Under Falling Skies review, expect to see full nudity. Great.
Male
Okay.
tuck nudity.
At which point, what have we been playing,
Don't
guys?
forget to subscribe.
What we've been playing?
Don't turn around, otherwise you look like a squash bulldog.
What have we been playing? Okay, so we've been playing a few things recently, actually. The first game we're going to talk about here is Parks, which we played on Tabletopia. Played really well. Continue to be impressed by Tabletopia. Works very, very nicely. I have actually, on the subject as well, ventured a little into Board Game Arena as well. That actually works even better. But a load of the games on there are premium only, so you need you need to have a paid account to play most of the games on there. Whereas a lot of stuff on Tabletopia is free. Although we did find a couple of things which appear to be free, but not quite.
Yeah.
Like what I think, like Pandemic's Legacy Season 0 is free
Season
for the
0.
first mission, I think. So you can play the
Yeah,
first
and there was another
scenario.
one You could play solo. Some other game we looked at. You could play solo. Burgle Bros.
Burgle
wasn't
Bros.
it?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you could play solo, but you couldn't play as a group, which
Yeah.
was kind of upsetting.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, Parks, anyway. Parks is a really interesting little game about trying to have the best experiences whilst taking a walk. So you're going to have...
Stroll.
Yeah, you're like your first... In the first season, you've got kind of like 5 spots on this track. And you have 2 campers which you're going to be moving across that track. You place it on one... You maybe gain an experience from the weather, and then you gain an experience from the place, whether that may be something like mountains or forests or something like that. And you're going to have a number of national parks on the top as well, which, should you gain enough experiences, you can claim that park as well as your own to score points towards the end. The caveat is as soon as you've moved your camper over to the right, you can't move it left anymore on the trail, so you have to keep moving forward as you go. So you kind of have to prioritize which tokens, which are the experiences, are going to be useful to you. You also cannot sit on the same space as another player unless you use your little campfire token. So you get one use where you can then move on to the same space as another person. Although once you've moved one of your campers onto the very last space, you get to flip that over, so you can kind of manage that and hit the same space as someone else a number of times during the same season. Then you replay it through 4 more seasons, gaining experiences and trying to visit as many national parks as possible. And there's a couple of other ways to kind of like help you out as well. Like you've got gear cards that can break the rules a bit for you. Like there were ones which gave some what's the word? It like reduces the amount of experiences you have to have in order to claim parks and stuff like that. So like the sunshine
like the amount of
tokens.
sunshine, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. I thought this was an excellent game, although it sounds really, really simple. There's actually a lot of strategy to it. Like using your campfires at the ideal time is really, really important because you're very limited with what you can actually do, because it's going to be hard to visit every single space on the track twice with both campers. The weather tokens that get placed on each of the spaces of the track as well is only picked up by the first player that goes on one of those spaces as well. So you have that, and it's something to do with when you have the last camper on the track, their next move is they have to move to the last space. They can't just take their time and move across every space. So there is an element of race there. Mostly because as well, you can only claim a park when you reach the last space as well. So just because you've gotten the required amount of experiences whilst you're moving across, if someone beats you to that last space and then claims that park you wanted, then all your plans can be completely undone. So there is kind of a race element here as well. So you kind of have to judge it between gaining loads of experiences and getting to that last space as quickly as possible. Like I say, I thought this was actually a really, really good game. What did you make of it, Daryl?
Yeah, I really enjoyed the game. I think it was really interesting. I've always wanted to play it. I think the thing that kind of drew me to it, again, it goes back to quite a lot of things I like to look at, was the artwork design of it. It had a very distinct kind of feel to it. When we read about it, it turns out, I think it was something like 54 artists from across like the areas and stuff like that had kind of designed these cards and these like pictures. It's a really strange thing because obviously it's being an individual artist, you would expect it to all look kind of a bit weird and different, but it actually overall the aesthetics was quite well matched to each other. Whether they were set a brief and they had to use a certain amount of colours or a certain amount of imagery or whatever, it was really interesting. One of the things I did like is there was some really starts off quite basic in a way. You can do an action, you can collect this, you can do this. I love things start appearing. So there was one where it was like a kayak on like some water, and it had a new symbol to it, and the symbol allowed you to copy someone else's action further along the track. So you could basically, if you were the second or third to go, you could copy the person that had done something else, and you chose which one you wanted. So if it was like they gained a certain material from doing an action on that thing, you could then copy that action, which was really interesting because it really helped if you needed, say, so it was like, is it like 4 resources: mountains, trees, water drops, and sun? Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, and then bears, which are like wild.
Yeah, so those were wild tokens.
Yeah. So I like the fact that you could kind of go, I need some mountains to pay for this. Such a weird thing, paying mountains for like a postcardy type thing. But yeah, so you were like, I've got enough of this, but I need to do that. But I could maximize this by jumping on the first thing and then say getting the 1 token from there, and then when I actually move again, going back to the next, going to the same thing and doing the exact same thing. So it was a really good way of kind of doubling up on rewards without actively doing them. The only thing is obviously you had to do it quite early on, because as soon as you started on that, someone then had to spend their camp token to do it, and it started becoming a bit of a, not a rush, but it was an interesting mechanic you had to add to it. So there was, although it looks kind of basic, it's got some depth to it, which I found really like a strategic depth, which was quite nice.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't even get onto the camera as well, which was a way of picking up loads of 1s and 2 points along the way as well. So there was a camera that there was a space where you could take a photograph Usually it would cost you 2 resources to take a photo, but if you're currently holding the camera, it only costs 1 of your tokens in order to take a photograph. So in other words, if other people aren't on the ball and taking the camera off you, you can just get a really cheap taking photo again and again and again and again. And at the end of each season as well, you get to take 1 more photograph. Whoever's holding the camera can take 1 more photograph as well. So there are a couple of other things you need to think about along the way. But to be honest, man, I love this game. Thought it was really good. It's quite a highly thought of game as well. Looks stunning. It goes beyond just the artwork as well. The actual storage solution for the game as well is absolutely amazing. But yeah. Anyway, moving on from parks. Okay, so Daryl, I believe you've been playing Lords of Hellas.
Yeah, so I think it's probably about 2, maybe 3 years ago I got this Kickstarter. It's one of the ones from Awakened Realms. I know we've sort of talked about them a few times. I know you've got one of theirs as well, one of the newer ones. Yeah, so basically it's I started trying to play the single player campaign. I've decided that I really need to sit down and play this game because it's one of those ones on the list I haven't played. It has a single player mode, so I thought I might as well. I've yet to kind of give it a full, I guess, rating, a Daryl rating, like that means anything. But yeah, it's one of those ones where it's quite a big board. There's a lot of miniatures set up. There's a lot of tokens. There is a lot of rules. I wouldn't say necessarily it appears to be considered in the rule book 20p. There's a hell of a lot of content within those small rules. So much so that I found I was constantly kind of going back and forth between the starting adventure, if you will, for the single player campaign and the original rule set, because they both do kind of somewhat have the rules, but the single player campaign kind of streamlines them, assuming you know all the original rules. One of the ones some of the stuff I found a little bit hard to grip was, I think there is a certain amount of I guess they're explaining, give you the script, if you will, of everything you need to know. And I found this most with territories. So the board's basically divided up into territories, and it's all sort of set around ancient Greece. So in order to do a lot of the actions and the moves, like build temples, to purchase stuff, do other stuff, you need to own a certain area within these continents, or in the continent, sorry. But it doesn't really ever explain to you fully how you do that. It does explain it in a little bit, but it's not given to you at first. It's given to you as like a kind of afterthought, which I found quite difficult to grasp, because a lot of the times it's just assuming you own the territories, which is great, but it does, to add that then at the end and then go, oh, this is how you do it, it's kind of a weird concept, because you're forever trying to do something that you can't. And I didn't figure it out until later on. I had to go to some forums and find out that actually it's an action you have to do on your turn in order to do it. But the problem is with that, that's your one special action, and that kind of uses up quite a lot of time and effort. So if other people are doing other things, you're not really getting around to it. I know you're probably going to get along in the long run, you'll get further ahead, but it was just one of those things where I feel like it really needed to kind of emphasize at the start, in order to do any of the other kind of established things, you need to do this first. And it was just a weird system, because you need to commit a priest to a monument in order to gain buffs. You don't have priests. The only way you get priests is by building temples. You can't build a temple unless you own that land. You can't own that land. And it's all that kind of, it's that knock-on effect of, you've explained this first, why have I now got to go backwards in order to do it? I don't know if it's just because it was I think it was the first big box kind of miniature game that they had done.
I think so, yeah.
I think the game they did before that, I think, was This War of Mine, which did really well, but it was an adaptation of a video game. So I don't know if, because this was their first thing, it was a little bit less easier to understand. I don't know if, because we found it quite a bit similar with Nemesis was the same, wasn't it? It was a bit rulesy that didn't really always explain everything you needed to know.
Yeah. I think you put it best when we were talking about it earlier, where you said it. A lot of the Awakened Realms games, their rule books feel like Fantasy Flight's used to, before they started separating things out into multiple manuals.
Like, don't get me wrong, it does flow. It just flows backwards, and it feels like. I mean, it's probably because of. It could be because I was choosing to play the game and learn stuff as it come up. So like combat didn't come up very early on for me, so I didn't learn anything to do with combat. Other parts didn't really come up, so I didn't need to learn that. But I think it's because it didn't really format it in a. I'm a big fan of games where they do an introductory mission which tiptoes you through stuff, which is a really good idea because it really gets you through the initial kind of mechanics. And then the next round, you know what you're doing. The next round after that, and you start building upon it. I think they could probably do with that like a baby steps, take you through the first mission. This is how you do it. This is what will happen. It's automatic. You're going to get in combat. You're going to have to trade. You're going to have to take land.
Well, you know what? We might actually get to that. We might actually get to that a little bit later on this podcast, actually. But yeah,
true.
By all means.
But yeah, I would like to play it again.
It sat in my house. It like sat in my house for about the first 3 months of you having it.
Well, right. So initially, when I had it, I flicked through the rules and went, "That is easy. That'd be perfect. We'll play that anyway." Steve's obviously got the bigger board. Fantastic. Set it up. Go on, Steve. We'll play it.
We just never had the time.
Those rules look a little bit choicy. If I'm, yeah. And you were like, "Do you want to take it home?" I was like, "Yeah, screw it."
I definitely find, especially with you saying that you jump straight into a solo play game and stuff like that, I still can't fault the technique of playing a dummy game by yourself first before even playing a solo version of a game.
Yeah.
Because solo play games, they often
100%.
Assume first of all that you already know the rules of the main game, and they even cut some rules out altogether and stuff like that will change them. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
That is one thing I would always bear in mind.
It does
for a lot
have
of
some
games.
interesting mechanics. Like it does have some interesting mechanics, and it does have some nice features they've done. So like the color coded things. So like red is combat, blue is troops and stuff like that. So a lot of the stuff you'll look at the board and go, "That's combat related. That's troop related." That makes sense. It's just I think the actual structure of the rules weren't great. But I mean, it could be like I said, I skipped bits out, or because I started doing the open. The initial campaign, it doesn't give you the full amount, so maybe I should have spent 20 more minutes just reading back to back the rule book and then going, okay, I can do this.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Either way, I honestly, I really want to give it a go as well once we're out of lockdown and stuff like that and can play again. Those minis, man. We bring it up every time we talk about Lords of Hellas, but they do look beautiful. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, that was what drew me.
Yeah. So... Up next, I had another board gaming session with my parents, and this time we played Azul. So last time I mentioned that I played Sagrada with them, and there were a lot of scoring mechanics, and there were a couple of board gamey terms that put them off a little bit. Azul kind of felt like it fixed all of those problems, because this one actually gets a thumbs up from my parents as well. It's that's to say it's getting a thumbs up from me as well. It's a really cool little spatial puzzle with parts that just look wonderful. You kind of have these resin tiles that are in 5 different colours and all have patterns on as well, which are unique to each coloured tile. And the idea is you're trying to tile a wall. That's what you're trying to do in Azul. You'll do this by having basically a number of plates which are arranged in a circle, and each plate will have 4 tiles put on it. On your turn is simply you choose one of those plates and you take all of the tiles off that are the same colour, and then all of the rest of them move into the centre, and then you put them on kind of like this... it's almost like a job track. So you fill the job track with one type of tile, and then at the end of the round, you get to actually place a tile on the row of tiles that you've got depicted on the right-hand side. The idea is every tile you place that way scores 1 point, but should it be adjacent to other tiles that have been placed previously in other turns, the scores start to multiply a bit. So in other words, it's sometimes about managing which coloured tiles you're putting in each row. So you may want loads more of these coloured tiles, so you can put them in one of the rows, so that it then goes next to... It actually places adjacently to one of the tiles you've previously managed to place by filling up its job row. That probably makes it sound a lot more complicated than it actually is. This is so simple. There's this really neat rule as well that the first player has this little token that gets put in the center of the circle of plates at the beginning of the round, and that indicates the center pool that all of the unwanted tiles have been moving into. The first person who takes the tiles from that center spot, so in other words, that acts almost as an additional plate. But whoever takes from that first takes the first player marker for the next turn, but they put it in this little slot that says a minus score on it at the end of the round. Because here's the other thing. If you really want a tile of a certain colour, you have to take all of the tiles of that colour from one of the locations, one of the plates, or from the centre space. If that means you have more tiles than can fit in your job row, that's considered dropping a tile and smashing it on the floor, and they add up minus scores down the bottom. If you do too much of it, you could end up with a massive minus score, which may completely wipe out any score you get over the course of each round. Basically, the game ends once someone's completed enough that they can fill an entire row with tiles that they've collected for the round, and then people basically score the game from there. It's really simple. It is basically a spatial puzzle, but one where you can be really mean, because your play state is very much visible to everyone else around the table, so they can all see exactly what you need, and they could say start picking off certain tiles just so you can't get hold of them, or worse yet, make it so that the only way you can get coloured tiles of the one you want, only by having a massive group of them, so you'll be forced to smash some of them on the floor, so you'll get a minus score. So there's real potential to be real mean in this. So yeah, basically Azul, really liked this. It got the thumbs up from my parents as well. Really easy to pick up, really quick to play as well. The games don't last very long. It's a brilliant game, and I really love it. So that brings us to our next game. Daryl, you've been playing Jurassic Park Unmatched, I believe.
I'm looking forward to this.
I have. So just before I bump into this, I really want you to make a sub-channel where Steve plays games with his parents. I think that would be such a channel, because it'd just be like Steve plays with his parent. Your parents should have their own little channel that they link together. Anyway,
I was going to say convincing my dad to do that. No chance. My mum maybe. My dad no.
An avatar knows.
They should hide their identities behind masks.
Just give them balaclavas beforehand.
Be like this new
Just an image of you. Hi, Steve. Board games with his parents, and your parents just wearing balaclavas, like they've robbed you and they forced you to do it.
You will play games. So, when did we last talk about? I don't think we did. I ordered a new expansion for Unmatched. The game is incredibly hard to get hold of. I don't know why. I'm not 100% sure what's going on, but you just can't get some of the stuff for it. It's very difficult to find. I managed to get, which I've been after for a while, was the Jurassic Park. So it is Jurassic Park, not Jurassic World set, which is a 2-player set. Essentially, you get, I think his name is Robert Muldoon, which is the guy that's like clever girl.
Oh yeah.
Girl. I've hunted a bigger game than this. So it's him versus 3 raptors. So the game normally works with, you have one hero and potentially sidekicks, unless you're Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee just is. It doesn't need sidekicks. It's Bruce Lee. So this game brings a few little different things to the party, which I found was quite interesting. The Raptors themselves all count as heroes, so there are no sidekicks for them. The Raptors get buffed when they're near each other. The Raptors can basically teleport, and all of their cards are incredible at attacking, right? So to kind of counter that, Robert Muldoon has what I quite enjoyed was traps. So he basically starts the game with 8 traps, and some of his cards allow him to place traps. And he, at the start of his turn, can, or he may, put down a trap. Traps work in a way that they can't be placed in another fighter's zone. Another fighter's spot, but can be placed in an empty area. So one of the interesting things with that is I blocked myself off, essentially. I created a wall. Being a ranged attacker and also happen to be in a zone where you start off, you can pretty much start to do pot shots, which is really good. The fact that the Raptors can't walk into is a good thing. They only get 1 damage, but it does kind of hinder them because they're when normal cards realistically have about 14 health for their character, the Raptors split it between themselves, which is interesting. But ultimately, in the end, the Raptors won. It was super close. It was honestly super close. I got myself down to 1 health, I think it was, for Robert Muldoon. There's 2 cards that I was after. One of these cards, so there's only 2 in the deck. It's a scheme card, and the way that scheme cards work is you sort of play them as like an action to do stuff, and it allowed you to pick 2 options. One of those set 3 traps down, and bring back up to 3 of the little sidekicks, which are in-gen people. So the plan was, hoping I could draw that card early on, which did quite help out, to get it again, was to box them all in with the traps and then surround them with the in-gen workers, which then allowed me to shoot with the in-gen workers through the traps in order to pin them, because they couldn't come out. Because one of them, I think I got down to like 2 health, one of them was like nearly dead, one of them I killed. So it was one of those things where I had this kind of game plan in my mind against how I would combat this by blocking them in. They had no option but to either come out and just die, or just sit there and get shot. Unfortunately, it didn't work that way. I got down to 1 health, and then it was just because of the it's quite a good ability that when the Raptors are in the same zone as each other, they add 1 to their attack. Plus the card then added 1 for Raptors being in the zone, so it ended up doing like to me, and I had like a 3 defense, so it was just done. Really good game, nice, quick and easy, super easy rules. I love it.
So I've been looking at getting into Unmatched myself.
Can't wait.
Yeah, and just can't get sets.
Yeah,
really can't get them. Especially like the 4-player ones, the ones with
I'm
4.
glad I got the...
You really can't get.
No, I know. The only good thing I know, it depends. The good thing, they're bringing out a new one, which is the Buffy the Vampire Slayer one, which is the only one you can pre-order at the moment. I know a couple of sets haven't been released this bit here yet. I know there's a newer one with like Beowulf and Little Red Riding Hood that haven't been released. But the one I'm trying to... I've got all the others, bar Cobble and Fog.
Yeah.
Which is like the kind of... the other new 4-player set, and it just doesn't seem to exist this side of 2019, which is crazy.
The funny thing is I've even
been
the coolest looking one though, isn't it? As well, the Cobble and Fog one.
It is, yeah.
Dracula, Jekyll and Hyde, Invisible Man, Dr. Watson, and Sherlock Holmes. It's some cool stuff.
Which is incredible. That's really cool. Again, they've all got their abilities. I like the fact that one of the main pulls to this is almost like that. We've talked about this before. Who would win in a fight versus, say, Bruce Lee versus 3 Raptors from Jurassic Park, and you go, well, the Raptors would win because blah blah blah. Well, actually, Bruce Lee would win because Bruce Lee's really quick, and then you get to kind of react and do that in this way.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that they're bringing out, we talked about it before, they're bringing out some Marvel stuff Man, I can't wait to use Bullseye and fight against 3 raptors. Man, like, come on.
My issue with
Bullseye versus Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Why are they picking Bullseye? I feel like it's a bit. I mean, they've got Robin Hood.
Yeah, I'd say if you're looking at a Daredevil set, Bullseye kind of makes sense.
Yeah,
like
Bullseye has to
Bullseye's
be
the one that you think about when you think about Daredevil villains.
I guess. Yeah. I'd like Wilson Fisk personally.
That would have been very cool. Very, very cool.
The idea of bringing Fisk standalone like they did with Bruce Lee. It's just this big dude that just does whatever he wants.
Yeah.
Crushes people's skulls with one hand.
No teammates required.
I don't know.
But he's still got loads of them just because he just doesn't want to get his hands dirty. But
he gets stronger and stronger the less henchmen are around. He starts with loads of henchmen.
Yeah, that would be a really good mechanic, actually. Yeah.
As he gets angrier and angrier, he starts crashing skulls.
The interesting thing, it's not the Hulk. So the only thing I would say that I'm unsure about the longevity of this game, I guess you could say. I
feel like the longevity. I kind of feel like the longevity of this game is only limited by how many licensed characters there are in the world. If I'm perfectly honest.
No, I don't mean so much that. I don't know where they plan on taking it, because up until now it's been like sort of revealed certain little bits. The back of the Jurassic Park box, which I think came out, that's been a while. That's been quite a while. It says in the back, look out for further Jurassic World stuff and Jurassic Park stuff. But I mean, I've not even heard even rumours of them even thinking about doing that. I mean, it had pictures of the set that I've got to like the set scale, which makes sense. And then the next one down was I can't remember the girl from Jurassic Park.
I can't remember.
Jeff Goldblum's character, and then a T-Rex. And I really hope to God they bring out a T-Rex, because the scale.
Is called Dr. Ellie Sattler.
Is that it?
Dr. Ellie Sattler, Dr. Ian Malcolm.
Yeah, Ian Malcolm. So that's what I'm hoping they're going to bring out, these other sets, because I mean, again, if it's to scale, the T-Rex is incredible. It'll take up most of the board, but by God, that's a great height.
That's the thing, is I don't think they will, because that's going to cause all kinds of problems with the game. If you're playing with one of the older game boards, or want to play with one of the older game boards, it's going to be really hard to incorporate that T-Rex in there. I imagine they'll scale it down in size.
I'd like to see
baby
Captain
T-Rex.
Kirk.
Huh?
I'd like to see Captain, like old style Captain Kirk, and like Spock and stuff
That'd
like
be
that.
good.
Yeah,
that'd be cool.
That'd be really nice. Yeah, like original Star Trek, red shirts. So you got Captain Kirk and then just red shirts going out and get killed.
And they've got like abilities that just mean if anything dangerous happens, they just die. Like anything dangerous happens close to them, you can choose to sacrifice a red shirt instead of taking the effects.
So good.
Dear. Okay. Moving on then. Next up, we have Tainted Grail. I actually played a little bit of this. I did only play the introductory mission though, which actually is solo mode, but it actually has to be played solo. So one player plays through, and it's a way of learning the rules and stuff like that. So this is another Awakened Realms game. So going back to what Daryl was saying earlier about really needing a step-by-step tutorial, Tainted Grail actually offers it, and it works really well. I haven't played too much into it, so I really don't know a lot of the mechanics at all, but I can start to like gather my thoughts a bit on how this game's actually going. Interestingly, it shares a lot of DNA with the Seventh Continent, in that what you're going to be doing is placing cards to form a map where your characters can start moving across and exploring. The idea is sometimes when you explore one of the spaces, you turn it to the other side and something happens, or it gives you a number to which you look up within this book that they've got, and you start reading through some text and start talking to people and stuff like that. It only introduces the basic concept of using energy to move around. So you use one energy from your energy track. Should you become exhausted, like the character that I had a an ability. It had a trait that if he got too exhausted, so if he used too much energy on his turn, I think if you're down to 0 or 1 energy, he takes damage. It's just a characteristic of his, because the idea of Tainted Grail is you're the B team. You're not a big superhero-ish type of person that is going to easily slay their way through hordes of monsters. You're, in fact, the second line that have been called in after the people who are great have been killed or have gone missing. So that's kind of a neat thing. So you'll tend to find your characters actually have abilities that aren't that great, but that's supposed to be part of the game. It has a really, really interesting way of dealing with combat and diplomacy. They're both basically on the same system. Of the idea is you place the enemy card down, and then they have a number of symbols down one side of the card. The idea is you need to play an attack where you match those symbols up, but it also has to match one of the symbols on your card, and then you get to take an action against them. It's a really interesting way of doing it, because you can combo cards within one turn as long as you've got like these little lightning bolt symbols to match up more symbols and then get more effect out of it. So essentially you can one-hit an enemy just through a combination of I play this card, then this card, and you say strike 4 hits on the thing, and that's enough to kill it, or something like that. Diplomacy, like I say, works in the exact same way. You have moments in the game where you need to get information out of someone, and you have 2 conditions, whether you succeed or fail the negotiation. So if you fail, something bad might happen. If it's something good, you may attain a really useful piece of information. But you have this kind of tug of war kind of scale on it. So the idea is, rather than dealing damage to them, instead you're starting to tip the scales in your favour. But for every time you finish your turn, they then have a comeback. And it almost has this really Phoenix Wright, attorney at law kind of aspect to it, of someone saying something, and then basically you'd imagine the person just goes objection or something like that, and then you have to start making your argument again. It's a really neat little system, and I actually really like the way this game's going, because I've not heard great things about Tainted Grail. I've certainly heard people say that it's the weakest of the Awakened Realm games. But at the moment, I actually have really enjoyed the tutorial, and I've really enjoyed that card-based system. Admittedly, I have not had all the rules introduced into it yet, but I've had a look at the basics, and I've actually been kind of impressed by it. But really, I'm going to be saving this, because I kind of want to play it when we can all get back in a room together. It's another one a bit like Gloomhaven, like the big box thing, where I really want to play it with other people and actually run through the story with other people. Like it was an RPG, really. I kind of feel like this fits into that same kind of category again. So really, that's where I see Tainted Grail going. Okay,
Yes.
So one last thing to talk about before we move on to the news. Me and Daryl had a game of Arkham Horror, the card game, on Tabletop Simulator. Okay.
Oh, we did.
So we kind of
right,
managed.
So
You like, game aside, Tabletop Simulator continues to be a bit clunky and a bit hard to figure out at times.
Yeah.
But the game itself, this is the first time both me and Daryl have actually played this with another person rather than playing it solo. It's the first time I've done it anyway. I seem to remember you saying you hadn't played it with someone else.
I've tried. No, I haven't. I haven't played it at all. I think one of the things we fudged it a little bit, didn't we? I mean, with any of these kind of card games, when you add more players, you're meant to up certain values and stuff like that. We decided quite early on that because we've been stuck in the same room for like, I want to say like 20 minutes, we decided we just keep it on like 1 player stats.
So the issue we had was I immediately drew my weakness whilst we were trying to figure out how to get out a room. All we had to do was gain a couple of clues, which is relatively easy to do. In fact, you're supposed to escape out the room on your first turn, but it took us about 3 because I
Yeah.
immediately drew my weakness card, meaning I couldn't search anymore, which is how you gain clues. So I was essentially taken out of searching for clues at that point. And it went downhill from there, really. Like,
Yeah. So not only did Steve get that, but then Steve got a load of like really bad cards which stopped it, like from the like event deck, if you will, that stopped him from doing other stuff. So Steve's character works best as a punching investigator. Mine worked best as a talking investigator, and it ended up with him not being able to do anything, like combat nothing.
I didn't
or
draw.
investigate, and me.
I was going to
so
say,
bad, and then
over the entire scenario, I did not draw
So fucking
one
funny.
of my weapon cards over the entire play. So I was useless, absolutely useless.
And there was me, literally no combat skill, like barely any combat skill, with all the weapons, but no skills that help me do anything else. So I'm like this tooled up woman with no abilities, and he's this like investigative cop that can't do any of that. So it was ending up like it was the most brutal game I've ever played of that version. In the end,
I just remember. Sorry, it got to one
go on,
bit.
go on.
This is the thing that is going to stick with me forever. Things were going so wrong, so I decided, okay, I'm going to make it so that there is no way we can fail this. So I played a bunch of cards which boosted my stats to a point that the only reason I was not going to do it is if I drew the critical failure out the bag, which there is only one of in this bag full of tokens. What do I draw? The critical fail token. So I wasted all those cards, and good God, it's just one of those things where everything that could go wrong did go wrong, and yet we still...
It was so good.
We actually still...
It was so good.
We still completed the mission, but with the worst possible ending to it, because there was...
Yeah, so there's technically 4 endings. One of them is... there's 3 endings, and one of them is a non-resolve ending, which kind of leads back to one of the other endings. It got to the point where we were getting chased by the end boss. We had no chance of fighting it. We were both really weak. And then we both decided the option was basically run out the house, let the woman burn the house down, and just try and get out. And we did that. And in doing so, Steve lost his mind.
Yeah.
And ended up having to retire because he'd lost his mind. It was so funny.
I was carrying a card.
Outcome.
So I was carrying a card that basically said, at the end of this campaign, if you haven't cleared all of these tokens off of this card, then you lose 1 sanity. I only had 1 sanity by the end of the game, so I just ended up going mad anyway. So yeah, we had proper bad luck though. It was the
thing is, I saved the campaign because we said we both want to try and play it when we get back out, but it's so funny.
Yeah. Anyway, that brings us to a close with what we've been playing, which means only one thing. It's time for some news. Okay, so...
News.
Yes, news.
News.
So first up in the news, we are going to be talking about some of the Games Workshop releases. Ian, would you like to lead us off with these, please?
I think the one that I want to focus on is the Lords of the Mortal Realms. So they've recently released a bunch of sort of Age of Sigmar-y bits, and they look super cool. Steve, you've got a picture, right?
Yeah, pictures up.
Yeah, banging. So we've got like the Underworld stuff, which if you go on the Warhammer community page, you can see in more detail. There's the Warhammer Quest, cool new stuff. It's got some nice, like let's go 8 heroes, 42 hostiles. It's a bit like Blackstone Fortress style of game, which is nice, very cool. There's some new Lumineth stuff, which is like high elves, that's what they call them now. Or I have called them for the last 5 years, or whatever it is. There's the Cruel Ghast Cruciator, which I can only describe as a crucified ghost. Looks really cool. There's Gardus Steel Soul, who is a man who likes jumping to the ground, according to the picture of him. Coolest one there is the White King. He's got like a Skeletor like facial expression, and he's got like his scary ass horse. It's very nice. And then there's Warhammer Underworlds, and they've got the Mob of Mork, which is Headracker's mad mob. They're like old style savage orcs. They got like claws. They just look great. There's no model in that set that I don't like. There's the guy with, you've seen it, Darren, haven't you? The sort of tribal headdress.
The mask.
Yeah.
Very cool. It's a shame that these aren't available as like a just a set, because I'd like to buy them like as part of my orc band, just of like weird naked 40k orcs.
Yeah, I think the bit I'm most excited, although I like the look of the most, is the Warhammer Quest, Cursed City. Some of the heroes from that, the ogre.
Yeah, that looks incredible.
The ogre especially looks great. There's like a guy with a pistol and a saber who looks really nice. There's a dwarf.
Yeah, and the sword.
There's a witch hunter. I mean, all of the characters look great, and some of the undead stuff as well cool. For it. The like undead mobs look amazing. Like there's like I don't want to say Cossack, but Cossacki and like Russian.
Yeah, can those like looking guys with the hoods?
Yeah. There's some just cool Russian style guards. Cool. It's very nice. That's the thing I'm most excited from. And also they teased something demonic is what they've said. The first demon prince. Looks very cool. I think people who are fans of Chaos in Warhammer will know who he is, but they've not released what the model looks like. Just the very obvious to some wings. It's very cool. When the model comes out, I'm sure people will get a proper gaze at it. But it's some cool stuff. But also at the same time, to hell with UGW.
Oh, I've been saying it a while.
I do want to look at the Cursed City stuff. It's like an old Warhammer fantasy style version of Blackstone Fortress, which models are beautiful. I kind of want to play it. Maybe we should finish Blackstone Fortress first.
It's true, yeah. I don't think we're even a quarter of the way through that yet. Good God. No. Okay. Anyway, is that it for the Games Workshop stuff?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, then. Next up in the news, we have got the Metal Gear Solid board game getting cancelled. Now, we've been talking about this a fair bit recently, because Daryl, you were quite interested in this, right?
Yeah, I don't think I was ever going to back it. I was interested when it came to retail because I like the concept. And I know initially it said it had a hell of a lot of content.
You wanted that day one exclusives as well.
Was it a Chinook and a Jeep?
It was something like that. It's a terrible practice that I really did not want to see in board gaming.
Such a weird thing. Like, don't get me wrong, the game, I think personally had potential because I like the concept of Metal Gear and it kind of probably could have worked. I don't know. However, as Steve's probably going to go into a little bit more, we haven't heard anything about it for like since we talked about it at that time. And I guess I just assumed it came out but never went to retail for some reason. And yeah, I guess you'll go into it. But
yeah, the interesting thing here is that it only got announced the other day that it actually got cancelled last year in December, and this is the first time they're actually announcing it. Yeah, so
yeah,
it's a really weird one. Luckily, this wasn't a Kickstarter. It was released on BackerKit where people could place pre-orders, but I don't believe anyone's lost any money on this. I don't think. But it's just there's going to be a lot of disappointed people that were looking forward to getting this game that can't get it anymore. The thing is like Daryl said, this game had potential. And the reason why I say that, because I'm not that big on licensed games, but this one was actually designed by a guy called Emerson Matsuuchi, who he made the Century series of games, so the ones with Spice Road, Eastern Wonders, New World, and then all of the Golem Edition ones, which have been released fairly recently. They're really, really good games. So this had a really good board game designer behind it, and I think it was PAX in 2018 where they demoed this, and everyone that came away from playing it, it seemed like or should I say, a large amount of people seemed to be saying, "Man, that was really, really good." So it had a lot of potential, but now it's left, unfortunately. It's been cancelled by IDW, and Emerson Matsuuchi has said he's still looking for someone to actually produce the game. He's not given up on the project, but the problem now is he's also now lost the license because IDW held that. So it's just gone, and I don't think it's ever going to get made, if I'm perfectly honest at this point. But hey, if you want to play a Metal Gear Solid board game, go out and get yourself a copy of Spectre Ops. That game's really good, and it practically is Metal Gear Solid. So,
That's a controversial one. I hate Metal Gear Solid.
Oh, wow, really?
I hate it so much.
To be honest, like, I haven't been a massive
got time
fan.
to talk about why you hate it.
I stopped. I'm not going to go into it. I don't like Hideo Kojima, and I don't like Metal Gear Solid.
I think that's fair enough, actually.
Yeah.
I really do. I didn't mind like Metal Gear Solid 1, 2, and 3, and then I kind of jumped off by the time you got to the PS3 ones, I think it was. But yeah, not a big fan. And I do think Hideo Kojima is a bit... I don't think he's as great as people says he is. I played that stupid game that he did fairly recently. I've forgotten what it was called now. Death Stranding.
Death Stranding.
Oh my god. Yep. Just forget that game. God damn it. Anyway, that's not quite all we've got in the news. We've got a couple of other things that we briefly wanted to mention but didn't really want to go into too much depth over. Ticket to Ride Europe is celebrating its 15th anniversary and is doing so by releasing a 15th anniversary edition, which is just going to have kind of like oversized parts and things like that. So like the trains and stuff are apparently going to be bigger. Looks like a really nice set, but yeah, we've got that to look forward to sometime soon. And Daryl, I believe you've backed something on Kickstarter as well.
Maybe. Ian tagged me and a few other fellow friends in the re-release of the Lord of the Rings RPG. I'll quickly highlight it. In 4 minutes, it smashed its goal, like ridiculously smashed it. So because of that, there is so much with it. Being the sucker I am, I decided that I would go for the leather-bound edition because it looks cool as hell, and plus you get the starter set and some other little bits of it. So, yeah, I know. So, you basically get it all in one, and I thought, do you know what, it's something nice to keep. I am, however, upset by the fact that I'm probably going to get burnt hard on import fees because it's come from Sweden. I just don't know.
So I'm
But
not...
we'll see.
I'm not kickstarting anything anymore because I think I have about 5 Kickstarters that I think are still trying to deliver stuff into the country, and every single one of them at the moment have been sending emails out saying, sorry UK guys, we're not quite sure how we're going to get it into the country just yet because Brexit is a bad thing. So anyway, let's not get into a Brexit rant again. God, hate it. Anyway, that's all the news. We have no audience questions again this week, but please do feel free to send us an email at everybodydiceshow@gmail.com. Send us a question and we will answer it on the next podcast. Anyway, it's time for us to move on to our big topic. And this week, our big topic is which games in the Board Game Geek Top 100 do you feel should be lower than it actually is? This topic was actually chosen by our patrons, who you can join at patreon.com/everybodydice, where for as little as $1 a month, you can vote on which board games we're going to review each month, as well as the topics for the podcast, and also access the newsletter as well, the audio newsletter we record every month. So please do go and check that out if you want. But anyway, the options that they had this month were... What's the first game you'd like to play post-lockdown? Have you ever had a flip the table moment? And the one which one was, which games do you feel are placed too high on the Board Game Geek Top 100? So, we all have the top 100 in front of us. What do you guys think? Because, okay, like, I'm going to level with you right here. I have actually been playing, like, ghost playing, quite a few of these, actually. And I have, by and large, been finding that they're up there for a reason, because these systems are really, really good in a lot of these games. So, like, I've ghost played a bit of Brass Birmingham. I've done Paladins of the West Kingdom, Orleans, and Great Western Trail. So I'm really looking forward to actually playing those with people. But I've been learning them, and my god, they've all been playing really, really well, and I can completely see why they are towards the top end of these lists. But we're not here to talk about that. But
I don't think there's anything on this list that I've played that I would say justifies being taken for top 100.
That does justify.
Everything on here that I've played, I have enjoyed and can see why it's in the top 100.
Yeah, sure.
Looking through it, I keep looking through it again and again to see if there's anything I've missed and gone, actually, I hate that. There's things that I would have higher, but that's personal preference.
Yeah.
But I can't see, off the top of my head, anything that I've played that it would be fair for me to go, no, I hate that, take it off. I thought Star Wars Imperial Assault was very high.
So what I
don't dislike it, and I really like it, but it's higher than I thought it would be.
So that's an interesting one, actually, because you see, my argument usually would be it's a licensed game, it's probably higher up there because of that. However, in this case, Descent, which is the game that it's actually based on, was already a highly regarded game anyway. That's actually dropped because Imperial Assault actually made improvements over it. So that one, I can actually see why it's in there, if I'm perfectly honest, because it is already a highly regarded game before that license actually got put on it. And like I said, they didn't just put a license on it, they actually fixed a lot of the things that Descent was not doing quite as well. So I can actually vouch for that one. It's funny because
it's not a diss. It's just I saw it and thought I enjoyed that, but I didn't realize everyone else enjoyed that as much as I enjoyed that.
Yeah, the one that probably is a little bit high to really start us off on this list is actually Star Wars Rebellion, which sits at number 9. Like,
I thought that too. I've not played it.
Yeah, I thought
so
that.
I didn't feel the need to. I didn't feel the need to judge because I hadn't played it, but I did see it and go, really?
This is one of those instances where it's a good game and it probably does deserve to be in the top 100, but number 9 probably not. It is a deduction game, a simple deduction game of what planet are the rebels on. That's basically it, and it's got a couple of nice little systems to it, but from all I've seen of it, I just don't know whether it should necessarily be that high on the list.
I think the other one I saw that I thought, I've not played that, but I feel so I can't really judge it. But Battlestar Galactica, the board game.
Do you know what? It has a massive cult following. That game has. That's actually. It's one of the games that has actually withstood the test of time. That used to be a hell of a lot higher on the list. In fact, a lot of people used to say, in terms of if you wanted a game with a hidden traitor role, that was the game of choice for a long, long time. You're looking at it, though, it's higher than Dead of Winter. And I don't know whether it should be. Which, for me, is still the game
There's
for
games
Hidden
that
Traitor.
I know in my head that I really enjoyed that I'm surprised aren't in top 100. So like the first would be X-Wing, which I know is just outside the top 100.
Yeah.
There was Ticket to Ride wasn't in there.
I think
Which-
Ticket to Ride is a really solid starter game, and I think that's what it is there. Because you'll also notice that Catan isn't in there as well.
But also, I don't know anyone that doesn't like that.
It's true.
And it's a solid game with a solid principle and a solid gameplay, which I'm not saying the other games aren't. I'm just stating my surprise that maybe that wasn't slightly higher, but I can see. Yeah.
I mean,
There's stuff like Magic the Gathering, which I wouldn't have in my top 100, but I'm surprised the Magic the Gathering community hasn't managed to get it higher.
I think so. No one's quite sure how the Board Game Geek algorithm actually works. I know just because a game has a surge in popularity, it doesn't make it into the top necessarily. It has to meet a certain number of criteria to do it, but I don't think we know exactly what it is. I think some of it is partly down to critical reception. So, like your big board game critics, I think, do have a say in where these go on there. I think that is slightly taken on board. I'm not 100% sure. But if it is, that would explain why Magic the Gathering may be outside that top 100. Because these days, I don't think Magic the Gathering, it's a cult game. Well, actually, no, it's not a cult game. It's actually a very mainstream game these days. But I don't think it quite has the critic seal of approval, shall we say.
I know there's just stuff that in my head I know that I really like the Resistance and X-Wing, and it's stuff that I'm surprised isn't in that top 100. But I also understand that it's a huge
not
mix.
on there, is there?
No,
Bang is not
I
a
can
necessarily
see
well thought
why.
of game. Yeah, it's
I know some people don't like it.
yeah, it's like a lot of people are really down on the player elimination style of play in Bang.
Oh right, fair enough.
Yeah.
Go out real early and have to watch everyone make awful decisions and lose the game.
Yeah, it is a thing that does hold that back.
You froze
definitely.
there, Ian. I don't know why. You froze. For some reason, it looks like you frozen, Ian.
It's all right. Just carry on.
You're
You're still fine, Daryl. We'll carry on.
We'll carry on.
But yeah, I mean,
justified by reasons.
my obvious one that I'm going to mention here is Wingspan, but I can kind of the problem is I can understand why that's in the top 100. I'm not going to say it's a game that doesn't deserve to be in there. It's not my thing. It really isn't. I think it's a fine game, fine, but I don't want to go into that too much just because I've mentioned it a lot before. The one game that has slipped out of the top 100 fairly recently, I think, that I would have really brought up would have been Marvel Legendary. That has absolutely plummeted through, and I think that is largely because of Marvel Champions, which is just a far better game.
It is what I was about to say, because Champions was in there and I wasn't expecting to see it, and then I couldn't see Legendary and just thought, that's got to be there's a link there, surely.
Like, Marvel Champions is better in just about every single way, if I'm perfectly honest. And I'm not a big fan of Legendary anymore. If anything, the game that it was kind of based on, Dominion, I'm kind of surprised to see that in the top 100. And I probably would have said that probably should have made its way out the top 100 by now, I would have said.
I was surprised to see as many iterations of Twilight Imperium as there are.
Do you know something? I was saying to Daryl just before this came on, I feel like when a new edition of a game comes out, the old edition should really see itself drop out unless massive changes were made.
How many people here have played Twilight Imperium to completion? And how many of them have played each version to completion enough times to make a decision on how high it is?
Yeah, I suppose. But, I mean, none of us have actually played it. I will say that right now.
It's a judge against Twilight Imperium. I know it's a popular game, and I know there's quite a lot of people that like it. But I'm curious, because it takes a long time to play.
It does,
That's the only reason we haven't played it, is we don't have the time.
Yeah.
There's a lot of iterations of what is the same game.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I would say as well. I would have.
Gloomhaven's on here twice as well, though. So
It is, yeah. And they're both practically the same game. Is the thing. It. You know, you've got Pandemic Legacy Season 1 and Season 2 on here as well. In fact, I think sitting at 98 and 99 and 100 is Pandemic, and then Pandemic Iberia as well, you know.
I think if they're going to do that, I think they need to have a system where when a game is released, so that you don't get X-Wing and X-Wing 2, because obviously they released the update.
Yeah.
They need to go, right, well, that was X-Wing. This is almost treat it as a supplement. Yeah. So, as a whole, the people who enjoy X-Wing tend to enjoy second edition of X-Wing. So that's clog it, and either it improves it and it raises it, or it reduces its popularity and it reduces it. And is it because there's not many people out there going, "Oh, I'm still playing 3.5 edition of Warhammer 40k." You're playing the latest edition, and I would apply the same principle to this.
Yeah, I mean, I bet you just because the cost of the game and the sheer popularity of it, that's why a lot of people are still playing Twilight Imperium 3rd edition, I would say, because the cost of Twilight Imperium is the other big kicker here as well. You're paying triple figures for a game, for a Twilight Imperium game. Doing that for the sake of boosting up to the most recent edition, I don't know whether everyone is willing to do that, and I imagine people still play 3rd edition and still go, this is an amazing game, but how different is it from 4th edition is the thing.
This is it. I don't know, but I can't imagine it's a huge amount.
Yeah, I from what I've seen, because I've watched a few videos of people playing 4th edition, and most of them say, yeah, it's really familiar. They don't usually go into just how different it is, but it's familiar enough that it's Twilight Imperium still. So I don't know.
So, one thing I'm curious about, Stephen, and I believe this is one of your big boys, is there's no Mysterium on there.
No, Mysterium's quite far down on there. You may actually notice from this list, there's very few party games. In fact, I don't think there's going to be a party-ish style game on here at all. I think the highest one overall might be just one, I think. I think that comes somewhere between 100 and 200. And I think Mysterium sits around the 250 mark, maybe, something like that.
Crazy.
But, yeah, to be honest, looking through this list, I can't see one party-ish style game, so all things like One Night Werewolf, like Ian mentioned earlier, with Resistance as well. Stuff like that. Codenames is the highest one on this list here at number 93. Yeah. And do you know what? That might actually be one which I might argue perhaps should be lower, because I certainly feel as if I've played similar games that are better than Codenames at this point.
I would agree, but I know it's held in quite high regard, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
I know that when you said you played Food Chain Magnate, you had thoughts of it being easy to exploit in areas. Yeah,
so I'm wondering whether we missed a rule there.
Yeah, because at 30, it suggests that the game and its construction, how it plays, is pretty sound.
Okay, so yeah, I know what you're saying about the exploits and things like that with Food Chain Magnate. When we actually played it first time, my friend Mike actually ended up pretty much setting up a brothel where all he did was hire waitresses who all earn him money, and he basically didn't sell any food at all.
He ran Hooters.
Yeah, pretty much is what he did. But but I feel like that might have been a mistake on my part. I think there is actually a limit on how many you were actually able to hire. So he used up the supply, and the supplies are limited in Food Chain Magnate, meaning the rest of us then couldn't hire any waitresses. Okay, so basically with Food Chain Magnate, though, it's such a flexible system. It's amazing. I can understand why it's so high on the list. I know the guys that I played with at the time didn't enjoy it particularly, but there's this amazing system where you could try undercutting someone in it, and then the system actually has things there where if someone's undercut you and is selling stuff for cheaper, so people are about to go there, all you do is launch a marketing campaign and you change what the demand is, and then all of a sudden they can't meet the demands of the customers at that point, so people come back to you. So there's loads of really, really cool systems in there. I think it's a great game. I know the game that we had wasn't the best, but I can see just how good it is from when I played it. I think with the right group, you can have a really good time with something like Food Chain Magnate. It can be really, really aggressive. Like, you can be really, really mean in the game, but you're certainly never done
Mean
and
Buffalo,
out of the game. Like Pete was saying when we were playing it, he was saying he felt like he was completely out of the game, but in fact, he couldn't see it. But there were ways around me gaining all the customers if he had just changed up a couple of things. It's certainly a game that I can see that if you don't understand how all the systems are working, you're probably not going to have a good time with it. So I can definitely see that, because it happened. But I feel like if you had people that were experienced with playing it, I feel like you'd have some really good games of Food Chain Magnate. So I'm kind of okay with how high that is, I think. Like I say, I feel like the problems might have been on me.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I don't know. Is there anything else that you guys can see on that list? I feel like I've covered most of the ones for me.
A pretty tidy list of
It
good
is.
board games.
It is. I don't think you can go wrong, but one thing, I think I might have mentioned it on the last podcast, just because a game's ranked highly doesn't mean it's necessarily for you. It really depends what you're after. I still feel like the best way to discover new board games is find a reviewer that you particularly like, follow them, and you'll pick up games that way. It's a better way than just going to the list. I'm simply trying to educate myself at the moment, so... Okay.
One thing I was looking at when I was looking at this list is some of the games, the difference in the number of voters is huge.
Yeah.
So 64,000 voters for Terraforming Mars. 64,000 people like it. It's probably pretty good, and
yeah,
you're probably doing all right. But then there's Gloomhaven Jaws of Light, and I'm not saying it's a bad game by any stretch of the imagination, but only has 8,000 voters. But they're within 3 spaces of each other, so there must be something somewhere where obviously games that are out for longer will have more voters, and newer games will have less voters. It's just the nature of things, but it's interesting that they're judged on the same system, even with less votes.
Yeah, I think from what I remember hearing about how the algorithm works, I think a game does have to have a certain number of votes before they start taking into account the average geek rating for them, which is how it's basically measured. Terraforming Mars, like I say, it's 4 years old at this point, and it's had this level of hype ever since it came out. Whereas something like Jaws of the Lion, I don't think that's even been out for a year yet, I don't think.
No, and it's natural there would be some... that it's never going to have the same number of votes. I mean, you've got stuff like Pandemic, which has had over 100,000 votes, and same with Carcassonne, Catan. No, like, they're always going to have huge numbers of votes.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that something can be nearly as high on the list with so few votes.
Like I say, don't know how the algorithm works exactly, so...
No.
So that just about wraps things up here. Thank you very much for joining us on this podcast. I hope you've enjoyed it, I guess.
I hope you hated it.
It just gone through this hour and 20 minutes and just hated every moment of it. Anyway, thank you very much.
All the way to the end, though.
But anyway, thank you very much for joining us. If you'd like to follow us on the social medias, you can find us at Everybody Dice on Twitter and at Everybody Dice Show on Instagram. We also have a Facebook page you can find at facebook.com/everybodydice. If you've really enjoyed it and just fancy throwing a couple of bucks our way, you can always join our patrons over at patreon.com/everybodydice, where for as little as $1 a month, they get access to the audio newsletter, as well as getting to vote and shape our content. Thank you very much for joining us on this podcast, and hopefully we will see you next time. See you later, guys. Bye.